Yeah. Hi everyone, nice to meet you all and hope you are doing well. So today I am going to share my experience with Riverpod and a little bit about my code structure, what I usually like to follow. And as per myself, I am Tanmay Soni. I am currently a student in Masters in Applied Computer Science in Concordia University, and I am also working with a startup, Common, as a Flutter developer. So prior to my masters, I have around 4 years of experience in Flutter, React, Node.js, and Java, etc. And if you want to connect with me, here's my LinkedIn ID, and you have a link. I will just give a moment if anyone want to connect. Okay. Okay, so my agenda here today is, first I will be talking about Riverpod introduction and how to install it, and then we will move on to implementation. Then I have some code demo set up, like I have created a simple news application. Then I will show my code structure like through my application, and some packages and tools that I like to use that makes my life easier. And then we will have some questions, and feel free to ask questions in between as well, like if you have something important to ask then hopefully I will able to answer you. And first, before going on introduction, I would like to ask if any one of you have earlier used Riverpod before, or like going through it. Like quite a few people so it makes my work easier. So first thing, I think like every developer's mind thinks that why we should use Riverpod, because there are a lot of state managements in the market, so why use Riverpod? So there are quite a few features that Riverpod provides and makes your life easier. So basically by using declarative and reactive programming, uses like Riverpod helps you handling a significant chunk of your app logic on its own, and like you don't have to manage your states manually at a UI side. Riverpod automatically already provides that with the state management thing, and other than that, if you are performing a network request, it helps you with built-in error handling and caching system. So what Riverpod does is, once you fetch a data in a provider, it basically caches that data, and you can use same Riverpod at another place in your widget tree, and it will return the same data without even like having a GET request or and making another API call. So that's quite useful. And once we come to how to install, so these are, hi.
Do you know where the creator said why he created Riverpod?
So no, I'm not exactly sure, but I know that it's based on provider. It's an upgraded version of provider basically. So I'm not sure. When Flutter came, so block was quite difficult to understand, and like it's a base state management that provides everything, but you have to implement your own services on it. And so in that case, the owner of the provider created provider, which was quite famous at that time. Like it went quite popular, but it had some limitations. So he tried to create Riverpod, and he gave a talk in like GDG, or I don't remember which event. So he explained like there are some common features that every app requires, like pull to refresh, infinite scrolling, and caching your data. So these things are like basically that Riverpod makes easier to implement, and with a quite few lines of codes. So like main purpose of his like making a Riverpod was this. And as per installing, it's quite simple. You have to just run all these commands, the basic Riverpod implementation, annotations, and code generator files and all. you can either run this command, or you can also add dependencies in your pubspec.yml file manually. So I think this you might all know as a Flutter developers. And one important thing is code generation. So like we need to run this command before creating a Riverpod logic. So whenever you make or modify a Riverpod related code, it generates a .g file that like with this command, and that's internally used to call the functions and managing the states. And this is an optional step. So it's enabling Riverpod lint or custom lint. So it's optional, but it's recommended. It's recommended through the documentation as well. Like it's better for like good programming practices and like custom refactoring options. So like if you have installed sorry. So if you have installed Riverpod by the previous commands I told in last slide, so it will already be installed, but we need one more step to enable it. So in order to enable it, we have to create a analysis option.yml in next to pubspec.yml, where we have to add this piece of code, and I will also show my analysis options.yml file where I have added linters and all except for better programming that I like some set of rules. And okay, so that goes our installation. And now the important part, how do we implement a Riverpod. So firstmost is you have to set a provider scope at a root level of your project. So like basically in your main.dart above my app, so it's it's on the top level of the widget tree, so that you can easily use Riverpod throughout your application. And next is, now this is actually creating a provider. So first we have a functional provider, like in documentation it's stated as like its name is as provider itself. So so one thing is that all your providers and Riverpod code should be annotated with @Riverpod or @capital R Riverpod. So difference between that we will see it later. Basically it's related to caching and auto disposal. So then, and one thing is that like as shown previously, we have to run that command and the code is automatically generated. So like in this example we have a function that is my function. So it will automatically generate a provider related to this function, and its name will be my function provider. So you don't have to initialize or create a provider on your own. It will automatically give you that variable. And the same thing with the first parameter of this function should always be ref. So ref physical is basically an object we use to call other providers as well, and like ref is an object we will use in our UI as well, where we will call like .read function or .watch, .listen, and we will like learn about those as well further in the slides. And either it is a functional Riverpod or a class Riverpod, you must create this ref function, and you must have annotated @Riverpod at the beginning of your code. So here is one example, provider.dart. So one thing for code generation, it is necessary that you give this path, that this file's name is provider.dart, so we need to give provider.g.dart. So it will automatically create this file, and as I told, we have to annotate our function with @Riverpod, and as our function name is activity, so it will automatically create a variable named activity provider. So our provider, whenever we call at our UI level, it will be activity, we will call by this variable activity provider, and the first parameter is activity ref, like the object type is activity ref and the object is ref. And it's basically a simple HTTP call. We are fetching our data and returning it to this provider. So it's an like I will tell you now that it's a known notifier function right now, so it's not used to change any state and all. But one thing it will do is it will like if you write like capital R Riverpod and you set it as keep alive true, it will cache that data with whatever you have fetched from this API. So it will keep it to himself, and whenever you call this provider again, it will return you same data without even calling the HTTP API again. So yeah, that's that. And after that we have defining a notifier. You can also call it, like I like calling it class provider. So basically it's, you can see here as well, it is also annotated with @Riverpod. So one thing with all the notifier is that you have to override a build method. So it's quite similar to the previous implementation. Like the build method, the logic here will be the same as you did in the previous functional provider. So it will be known notifier part of this provider, and you can at the same time you can create more methods in this class, which will be basically notifier part of this provider, which will help you notify the states and update your state at the UI level. Yes.
On the previous slide,
Yes.
when you're caching the gets, that makes sense because it's immutable references.
Yes.
But what does it do on posts?
So at post, and so that's why like it's recommended to use functional provider for a get operation. You have for the first basic fetch request, and afterwards, like if you have a like similar kind of implementation where you have to fetch a news and then update, like save a news for later. So you have that kind of, or you have to fetch more news after as per the pagination. So you can create your another method where you can update the state. Once that request is completed, you can update the state, and I will like after this I will tell you there are 2-3 methods to update a state. You can like reset the state of this provider, or you can just directly update the state and replace the data itself, and it will be reflected at the UI level. So for most of the post requests, the class provider is recommended to use. And okay, and where was I? Yeah, one thing is that like similarly in this example I have a function, like I have a class name myNotifier, so I need to extend it with underscore $myNotifier, and this build method is compulsory, like we have to create that, otherwise it will give a compile error. And one thing is that once we have annotated it with the Riverpod, it's not a normal class, so you cannot create a constructor of this class. So as soon as you create a constructor of this class, it will give a runtime error to you. So I'm not sure why is that, but it's like quite mentioned in the documentation that you should not do that. And we can access these methods, that the extra methods we will be creating, by ref.read and giving your provider's name .notifier and your method name. So here is one example of this. It's a to-do. You are fetching a to-do list from the build method, then you are, as you said, post, we are doing post here. And as per updating the state, I will show through my project how to update a state here. So it's just adding the to-do at this point and doing nothing, not updating a state. So before that, and how do we render this on UI? So we have quite some widgets. So we have consumer first. So it's quite similar to builder, but it has added ref, where we can call our providers with the help of ref. So one thing is that you can in a single consumer you can call as many provider as you like. You just need to add ref.watch in the consumer, and like in this example I have ref.watch activity provider and fetching the activities, and Riverpod is automatically creating a states at the back. side, and like I am handling with the switch. Like if you get a data, you show the activity data. If you get an error, a sync error, so you get a like error message, and other than that you get a circular loader. That so it's in 3 lines of code you made a logic that might take you more lines in other state management. So that's what Riverpod does. It makes your life easier, writing less lines of code. And then we have
Just a good question.
Oh,
on the previous slide, you said, right, that switch statement there, those async data and what's the other one? Async value?
async error, yeah.
They're Riverpod methods, right? They're
Yeah,
Riverpod,
so
classes.
no, actually, I'm not sure if you are aware of async value. So there is a async value that like Flutter has in the library, and Riverpod.
And Dart.
Yeah, in Flutter. So Riverpod like extend that, and like that's the base class. Riverpod creates async data and async error on above that async value function. And yes.
Is there any difference between using a stateless widget that returns a consumer versus using a consumer widget?
Can you repeat? Sorry.
There's another. Here you use a stateless widget
Yes.
where you return a consumer.
Okay.
Is there any difference between that and directly using a consumer widget?
Yeah, so my next is the consumer widget. So there's no difference in this, just that you don't have to return consumer widget separately. You can just extend your class to a consumer widget or a consumer stateful widget. So it's up to you, like it's preferred you use it like this. So but in providers we used to use consumers only. We didn't have support for consumer widget and consumer stateful widget. So now with Riverpod we got this support, and it's like quite useful. And like here are 2 examples. One is with consumer widget, and like now your ref.watch call goes to the like after the build method, like before return. And like in consumer stateful widget you can like create a ref.call in your init state, as well as in the build method as well. Okay, and now some detail about the ref keyword, like how do we read provider state. So first we have ref.watch. So any question? Sorry. So any widget that is listening to your provider will be rebuilt whenever the state changes. So basically whenever you need your UI to be updated, whenever you change your state or update, you have to update as data at like each pagination. You need more data to be added, or like after post request you get a new set of data, so you can replace. You can set a state at provider side, and the ref.watch will listen to that data and enable you to edit in the UI side. So ref, yes.
Why are you saying that you should always prefer ref.watch over ref.listen or ref.read? Because for big applications this causes issues.
So mostly to make your UI more reactive, you can use ref.watch, so that you don't have to handle like previously what I used to do when I started with Flutter, like quite a few years back. So like we used to have a local boolean value for loading for data, like data is fetched and all, and we used to use set state for every time updating those data. But Riverpod helps you, like you don't need to use set state every time or update a local variable and then update your UI.
Sometimes I think ref.read is for the widget that you don't need to change it. So
Yes, exactly.
ref.read. So it doesn't mean you have to prefer using ref.read.
Basically that like as per the guy who created Riverpod, so he mentioned in his documentation itself that try using ref.watch as much as possible, so that you're like.
I think it's over ref.listen, not ref.read, because these are two.
So he mentioned in one of its notes that we should only use ref.read in like on pressed function on tap or on click
Yeah,
on,
for
on
example,
only
you
on
want to
that.
change your function.
And yeah, but
So basically, ref read, you can easily make mistake.
yeah,
That's the biggest reason actually, because the thing is that ref read, meaning that if the provider not keep live state, then
Yes.
no one is watching the provider, right? So meaning that the cache is going to be erased basically.
That's
Because no one
as
is
Ashley
watching.
said, it's a really extensive function. We shouldn't use we should use it as much as few as possible. So
I think that is not the factor to decide to use read or watch for me. Because if you want to do that, if it's a big application, complex zone, you can still split it. You can make this smaller widget, and then you can still use the watch, right?
Yeah.
The last level. Right?
and even for if you want to call another provider inside one of the provider, so you should have always use ref.watch, and like either for if you have to just read a function, get a current state of that
I
function.
usually use the widgets like a builder or anything instead of using .watch or anything.
And that's fine too.
For the widget that changes.
And that's fine too. Where was I? And I was on ref.listen. So mainly this is like you can use this function in your init state, where you have to, like, whenever the state changes, you have to initialize another side effect like a snack bar, or you have to log that data or something like that. So no change on the UI side. Let's just additional change if snack bar. And read if you want to fetch the current state of the provider, like. And I guess most of the post request we need to do by ref.read. And yes, and as per the code demo, okay, so I tried to create a basic news application with Riverpod. So it's just like fetching news from the API, and whenever it reaches the 75% of the list, it fetches more data and updated it at the same time. So like the user will never know that at the backside it's fetching more data, and like this just saving the data. I'm using SQLite and saving the news is to my local database. And so in order here, what I need to show you is the providers. So I have two providers. One is news provider dot and local storage provider. Sorry. And here. So first, what we could do is like create a functional provider. We just fetch your data and show our news. So like a first question, like it's basically used for if you have to just fetch your data and don't have to update anything, and just fetch once and keep it alive. Don't have to call that API every time. And in this case, I need to fetch more news whenever the page controller reaches the 75% of the list. So what I did was I created a build method, I created a provider class, and in build method I am fetching the news first, I guess 10 or 20 articles, and as soon as it reaches the endpoint, I am again calling a function fetch more news. So now how I am updating my state is like state equal to async data, and I am adding my response. So I am merging those lists that I already have fetched, and I am getting the more data that I fetched afterwards, and I am just adding it to the state async data. Yes.
So how are you evaluating whether you're at 75% of the list?
So yeah, for that I created a service in my utils.
Notifications.
Viewport controller?
So pagination scroll controller, I'm using a scroll controller. I added a listener there and some boundary offset.
Yeah, I understand.
Okay.
That's cool.
Okay. And yeah, so if you want to see if like even I can add for if there can be any use case, you need to show a loading state. So whenever it reaches that point, yeah, it will show a loader. and then update the state.
If you scroll down very fast.
Yeah. So that's why I didn't add loading, that the user will never know that you fetched more news or you did anything like that. So it just simply keeps on scrolling, it fetching more news and all. So you can, it depends on your use case. Yes.
Sir, there are other packages for frameworks, like for example, GetIt or provider itself. What are the main advantages of using Riverpod in comparison with?
So mainly caching, it does your caching like on the row itself. It does built-in error handling. If you throw an error, it will automatically throw an error at your UI level, and I guess it will display this async error widget. So that's quite handy. And what it's my personal opinion, but what I like about Riverpod, it quite forces you to create a provider for each feature. So what usually developers, or in my previous experience, when I started with Flutter, like my thinking went in a way that I created provider for each screen. But that kind of like after some experience and after some experimenting, I get to know that that's not exactly correct. So we need to create a provider for each feature and handle it separately. So Riverpod quite forces you to do that. So it's a better practice, and I think that's it. That's the reason I like. It's 2 or 3 months back that I started with Riverpod. I just wanted to experiment and try. Other than that, I have used scope model, Mobex, and a block. So I feel block is little more stable. Like it's a basic learning curve, but for Riverpod it's a steep learning. You have to look into more widgets and more. There are more things that you have to quite go through. So, but by time you can go through that. And one more thing, that it's not in any documentation or anywhere, but like I faced it in one of my use case, so I used it like this. So if Riverpod provides with you basic states like error, loading, and success. If you need more states over that, so I created my own states like initial state, loading state, error state, success. Even if you are creating a game, your game has a different phases. Phase 1, so success phase 1, success phase 2. So you can create as many states as you want. I create a sealed class.new state that I am just returning my state at my build level. So every time it will like I can just add here and return let's say initial state, and my UI will just render according to my initial state, and afterwards I can call my other function and try like updating state, and it will automatically render on the UI. So it quite feels like block, but it's quite useful when you have more states than the basic ones. And that's that. Okay, so that's as per the news provider. So one thing you saw here, I updated a state with async data, so it didn't do any more fetch, like it just directly updated the data. In this case, in local storage, so it's not, it like getting a data from local storage is not a big deal. So what I did, once I inserted a news, I just did ref.invalidate itself. So it will just reset your state of that provider, and the build method will run again. So it will just directly fetch your like the stored news again and display those. So this is one method as well. Once you do a post and you need that it should go do a get method again, or it should fetch again, you can invalidate itself just by simply writing this line, or you can just directly update the state, adding that data to the list, and just display, and it will automatically be rendered. So that mostly covers my like code demo. Then after that I have code structure. This is the structure that like I follow. I like, so like if you like any other structure, you can go ahead with it. And for with Riverpod, I liked it quite simple and segregated. So inside lib I have assets folder basically. So I am using Flutter gen for generating my asset constants, and in core I have constants. Basically, if I show from here, so okay, so I have constants folder where environmental constants and theme constants are setted. Enums, I don't have enums right now, but you can add as per your project need. I have a folder for local
Sorry,
VS.
how do you mentioned like you have a generation for assets?
Yeah.
What is it?
I will talk it about in the next slide in packages and tools. So there is a package that I use. So yeah. So I have one folder for models, or like currently I have one in use model. I will just create more whenever in more models. I will create more folder and create. So I am using freezed here, so it helps with deep copy and all. Then I have providers, each provider in a folder. Then a repository, so I am using DO. So I created a API exception class for default message, default exception, and like custom exception, setting custom exception type. This is the API repository. The call from the provider comes here, and the main logic like adding to your list and all this is handled here. And then API client, it's just a API request call here. And one is utils, just a common service that you might need. So in this case I am using pagination scroll controller in order to like keep a track of my list. And that's mostly concludes the core part of it. And then I have L10N is basically for localization. If you want your app to be in like different languages, so just create like I am using Flutter localization, so creating L10 dot and then just adding this .arb files, and it will automatically generate localized application for you, whichever language you want. And then I have routers folder, so it's basically one file for routers. Here I am defining all my screen paths and the routes here. And then in screens, for each screen I am creating its own folder. If any of the widget is specific to one screen only, so I can add to this folder separately. Other than that, for now it just has home screen, save new screen, and splash screen. Now if I have theme, I have set it like this, like I am calling this build theme at my app.darts, and I am just copying it from my base theme. I have set it the use material 3 true, and I can just copy with and add like my own text theme here, or if I want to change anything else. So I have also created a theme extension class where this is my just if you don't like the default theme colors of some particular backgrounds and all, so I can just add extension here, and add this background gradient color or other color, border gradient color, everything like that. And other than that, this widget folder, it mostly consists of the common widgets, like in this case the main home screen and the save new screen both are using article list, so it's a common widget, just sending values here and displaying accordingly. And fallback error is one thing. It's one cool thing that I like is I found on internet is in app.dart I am using like error widget.builder. So whenever you get an error while rendering and you get a failure, so it will never show you a red screen, it will just show me this common widget fallback error. So it's quite useful when you are giving a demo or something, you don't want to show your red screen so it's better to show widget that shows error. Other than that, now packages and tool. Yeah, yes.
About the structure, when you have like a complex UI and you have a lot of widgets inside the widgets, and you create different files for the whole structure of widgets. Do you prefer having consumers at the lowest level or passing them down from the top?
So I usually prefer that I extend my whole widget to the consumer widget or consumer stateful widget. It's much better to handle add a consumer separately. So wherever you want to update your UI, you just add these to that class, and it will automatically handle itself.
Okay, so you will do it for each widget.
Yeah. So so it's you can do that as well, but it's much easier for your own sake. Okay, for packages and tools, I'm using one Flutter util, Flutter screen util. So it basically here. So if you have a design, you can just give your height and width for the design size, and it will automatically by unitary method update the whatever you give you padding or font size. It will automate. You have to use .w or dot if I can show somewhere. Okay, font size, if I give 48 and if I use .sp, so it will automatically update as per my device screen size, width and height. So this, I found this quite useful, even if you have to make a UI for different screen size and even iPad and all. So other is Go Router I'm using for routing, and FlutterGen that you asked. So it basically what it does is, so I have this piece of code here, this piece of package code here. So I just what I do is I just add my fonts and images to this asset folder at outside level, at the main level of your project, and with the help of the FlutterGen runner, it automatically generates constants through this folder. So what happens is I just add asset.dart. I will just export assets.gen.dart and export fonts.gen. So it will automatically generate a file for me where all the constants are already defined. So it's quite useful. You don't have to create your own constant and check.
Is it by Flutter itself? So?
I'm not sure. I have to check. You can check that on pub.dev. And build runner is for generation, code generation. You need this package. Localization, in order to support different languages, you I need localization. This pack, I'm using this package. And icon launcher is it's quite useful. It makes your life easier. You don't have to do extra effort. You just where's my pubspec.yml? Yeah. Go to pubspec.yml, set this piece of code, enable it, and give the path to your image. It will automatically generate icon for each of this platform. So just give this path and it automatically generates this. So it's quite useful and easy to use. You don't have to go to Android and iOS and then again set a icon. So other than that, Riverpod generator, it just helps you to generate Riverpod code, like converting from consumer widget to consumer stateful widget and back to consumer widget. SQLite I'm using for local DB. It's quite fast and easy to use. And DO for most of my HTTP requests, so it's more robust than HTTP. So and then linter, so for analysis options.yml, I have I found these on internet. So I have these set of rules. I like these, you have to declare a return type every time, you annotate overrides, and camel case types. So it gives you all those error and just for better programming practices. So if you want these, you can if you want these set of rules, you can get from my GitHub repository. And I think that's it. Is there any more questions? Yes.
Earlier you were, let's say in your API, instead of, if you wanted to pull a list from the server,
Okay.
say a list was changing the server side all the time, should you run that from like within the Riverpod class and set that up inside Riverpod?
So like it depends if you like if you can like what I did was I kept it alive, right? Where it is? Yeah. So you can just remove this or keep alive, and you can use it like that. So it will just it will not keep a cache of your data. So if your list is getting updated at the server side every time, so every time you go to that screen or you call this function, it will fetch that list for you every time.
But if I want my screen to change in real time to reflect what's happening from the server,
So in that case, you might have to like build a stream function in Riverpod. Like it will create a snapshot for that like that set of data, and whenever there is an update, you can you can get it to the Riverpod and set your state accordingly, and it will automatically update on the UI side. There is one example in the documentation with the snapshot, and you can set a stream and get your data as soon as it updates.
Is it a WebSocket or gRPC server stream? Or is it
it's REST API.
Well, so we are actually quite over time.
Sorry about that.
Maybe you can use the break time for the questions. So we're going to have 10-minute break. So if you have more questions, come to him and then ask. Cool?
Sure.
So 10 minutes and then we come back.